Hey everybody, welcome back to Video So today we're continuing the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and the core of course has been updated again. As of yesterday afternoon, Robert FPGA Zoomspots issued another update fixing a few little graphical bugs, but also fixing Bangai-O from Treasure. If you haven't been following along with the testing, this was one game that we could not play past the boss of stage 1 because every time you defeated that boss, the game would hard lock within the actual core itself. Now today you can play Bangai-O seemingly from start to finish, which is absolutely spectacular because this is one of the most interesting and unique Japanese exclusive games on the console. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. But now that we have Bangai-O playable in the Nintendo 64 core, that is the trilogy as far as Treasure games are concerned. We obviously already have Sin and Punishment, and we've had Mischief Makers as well. Bangai-O was the last game that was giving the core any trouble. What it came down to was an issue in RDP, or the Reality Display Processor, and how it was handling the code of the game. It was trying to draw something to the screen apparently, and that would cause the core to freeze. Now you'll see here in the first boss fight, this is what we could get up to previously to the core update. You'd get in here, there would be a couple graphical glitches, and you would defeat the boss and the game would hard lock. Not only does that not happen now, but all of the graphical glitches within Bangai-O seem to be 100% solved. I played this game just this morning before I did the voiceover, and I could not see anything to my eye that made me think that this was doing anything other than running exactly like real Nintendo 64 hardware. And you'll see here the boss is defeated, the screen would go white, we would fly towards the screen, and nothing would ever load past that white screen. Now we have this stage completion screen with all of the different data from our actual match, and we could move on to the next area. And of course, before this sequence in the beginning was always running well, and that is still the same. This now feels exactly like real hardware, and it's one of the most unique games on the Nintendo 64. It's basically a free roaming bullet hell shmup with a little bit of 2D side-scrolling platforming going on, except you have freedom of motion across the entire screen. As of yesterday, we were never able to see stage 2, and now you can 100% get there. I made it all the way to stage 6, and that's when the game gets very difficult, so honestly, that is where I ended up dying. But just take a look at the overall graphical performance of the core on this game. There's so many different sprites, so many different background layers, so much parallax going on at once. This game is drawing so much to the screen, and unlike pretty much every other Nintendo 64 game, it's doing it basically in 2D. There's very few 2D games on the Nintendo 64, and I would say Bangai-O is one of my favorite. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite 2D game is, I would be curious. But just getting to level 2 in and of itself is an absolute feat, because this was one of those bugs that was at least consistent. It would freeze at the exact same place at the exact same time for every single user. Some of the other bugs right now that cause the cores to freeze, but not in the exact same manner, the exact same way, the exact same timing, those are much harder to deal with. But honestly, this is still an awesome thing because it gets another game playable, and because we are already able to get into 100% of the games, now this is just down to bug fixing and freezing territory. Sure, you can't play Jet Force Gemini yet, and sure, Conquer will still freeze, but Bangai-O coming online is one of the new playable games is absolutely spectacular, and all that parallax there, all the different sprites, all the different layers look absolute perfection to me. And this is a game that's gone through multiple revisions with fixing the graphics, but that freeze would still persist right here. We're completely beyond that now, and that is absolutely amazing. This core is definitely feeling like it is hitting the finishing line. There's maybe like only 4 to 5 games that would be classified as completely unplayable because of those freezes, and a couple other games that you can definitely play but you can't finish without trying to skip around with save files. But Bangai-O is here, and that is so much fun, and it's so much fun just to talk about the Treasure games on Nintendo 64, because we obviously already did that long play test of Sin and Punishment, and Mischief Makers may come next, but leave me a comment down below and tell me if there's another game you want to see tested in a long format. And the best part about Bangai-O is not only does it have incredible music and an awesome soundtrack, but it also sounds great in the current core, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and I'll come back and show you more of the game. Sounds perfect coming out of the core, and that's the thing with the new Bangai-O testing. I can't find a single thing that makes me point to it and say this is not running like the real hardware should. But again, I am not the most familiar with Bangai-O. It's probably been a few years since I played this game, and I did not play it on the Nintendo 64 because it's available on more than one platform. But I absolutely love the game, and I'm definitely going to be doing another full playthrough in my spare time outside of the channel, because believe it or not, I actually do play MiSTer FPGA when I'm not making videos, even though I'm pretty sure everyone thinks I make videos 24/7. But there's just so much on screen at once in Bangai-O. There's so many different projectiles, so many different power-ups, so many different collectibles. This is literally just pushing the screen full with everything that RDP can draw, and maybe that's a little bit why there was a little bug in the previous cores. I even love these little story vignettes here. Of course they're in Japanese, so you're not going to understand them, but you can kind of get the gist of it. You'll see there those special attacks just send out like 20 missiles at once, but the core is 100% keeping up with absolutely everything, including getting you to the next level, and I can't wait to play this game through more. This was one of the last games that people could not check out, and now you can today. But that begs the question, maybe the next video will be Jet Force Gemini, maybe it'll be Conker's Bad Fur Day, because again, the core is getting very close to the finish line. It is now in a situation where there's a ton of games you can just sit down, play start to finish, and see the credits scroll. And I'm going to be having a couple special videos next week, my top 5 perfect games, as well as Andy D's top 5 perfect games on the core, to give you guys a better sense of what you should be playing today. But honestly, Bangai-O is just one of those special games. I have always loved this because it's unique and unlike pretty much everything else you can play. Obviously you played platforming games, and obviously you played shmups before, but combining a full range of freedom in the motion as well as bullet hell mechanics is just such a fun time. Obviously it doesn't play exactly like a shmup because you can take more than one hit, but obviously even with that life bar, this game can get brutally hard in later levels, and that's why for this test I ended up dying at stage 6 and figuring 10 minutes was good enough. But all of the sprites for all of the story, all of the characters, everything on screen, it just looks so good coming out of the Nintendo 64 hardware. And honestly, this is another game in which I prefer playing it on MiSTer FPGA than I do my real hardware, and I do have a complete in-box copy of this game. That is because on S-Video with my PVM, I don't get the same level of detail out of the 2D sprites as I do here across that clean HDMI on MiSTer FPGA. And do be aware that FPGA zoom spots just changed some of the bit processing as well. There was a situation in which it was rendering off an 8th bit versus a 7th bit, and that made the dithering pattern ever so slightly different than original hardware. And honestly, I tried to show a comparison, but the compression on YouTube just absolutely crushed it, and there was no noticeable difference. Just be aware that by default, the core is now going to default to the 7-bit processing, and you can switch it over to that 8th bit. And honestly, it's going to have a different number on the screen. It's just kind of in the background how these things work. But unfortunately, we're at the area now where some slight visual changes just cannot persist past YouTube compression. But you'll see there just how many projectiles go out at once. This game is intense, it's absolutely mind-blowingly fun, and it is extremely difficult. I may say this is one of the more difficult games on the entirety of the Nintendo 64 hardware, and honestly, when you die, you get this absolutely strange scene. You definitely want to die at least once to see it. But Bangai-O is here today. This is one of those games that was been booting for probably like 6 to 8 months with some graphical glitches and that freeze after the first boss. Today it is now here in its entirety, and people are definitely playing through it right now. I don't have confirmation you can get to the end credits, but I haven't heard anybody talk about any issues with freezing whatsoever, so I'm going to err on the side of I'm sure you can complete this today and have an absolute ton of fun. And if you've never played Bangai-O before, trust me, you absolutely have to check this thing out. It is unique, it is fun, it's completely different than anything else on the system, and that's what Treasure really is known for, making games that just feel so familiar yet so unique and different all at the same time. But just be aware you need to practice at this game, because as you get to later stages, it just becomes exceedingly difficult. You're going to die a lot, but you need to learn what the game's asking of you, better study the stages, and you're going to get much further, and that is where a lot of fun in Bangai-O comes from. The learning curve, your ability to read a situation, and your ability to succeed. And the best part is, as of yesterday, you can actually do that on MiSTer FPGA. But there's still more games that you can't play, and we're going to be talking about those in the future as well. But if you want to see any retests of previous games that had glitches on the current core, leave me a comment down below and tell me what you want to see played next. But the Nintendo 64 core is absolutely shaping up to be so amazing in 2024. That's not to say in 2023 it wasn't spectacular as well, but right now it's feeling like basically a complete console. Short of that, have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.